Sensationally silver, because you are.
Welcome, everyone, to Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind, conversations with extraordinary, ordinary persons of age, people who are going to bring you information, inspiration, and validation. Join us. Welcome, everybody, to Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind. My guest today is Bronwyn Johns, and she's written a book that all of us need to think about and probably all of us need to have. So we're going to talk about that in a bit, but first we're going to talk about Bronwyn. Bronwyn, welcome.
Thank you so much, Robyn.
I'm so glad you're here. So I have to ask the first question that I ask everybody who comes on this podcast. Bronwyn, how old are you?
I've just turned wonderfully 60 and happy to be here.
All right. Yeah, you barely make it because that's our minimum age requirement. So yay that you qualify.
Yay!
Yay. All right. And that's a great attitude to have. I'm 60, far out. All right. So you haven't been over our limit very long, but what's the most challenging thing for you right now, being the age you are?
Look, I really don't think age as a factor has anything to do with anything that I do, I suppose. I think it is your state of mind. I believe, if you're going for a position, it doesn't matter how old you are. If you've got that state of mind, I actually went for an interview yesterday with my old company, and which was delightful. And they've welcomed me back in the fold, and I'm 60, so I think that's a nice coup. I got when I was a community manager for over 55s, and then I actually got poached when I was 59 from another company to do property management. So I don't think it really matters. And to me, that was a real coup, because I thought I'm still wanted and I'm 59.
Well, and they're getting their money's worth because you have all that experience, all the life experience, and it sounds like you've got experience in that area too, to go back to that job that you did before, right?
Yes. And I believe a lot of people do say, oh, look, I'm too old to get a job, or they won't give me a job because of this age. I don't think that's an excuse. I think if you put yourself out there, you're positive about what you do and what you'd like to do, I think that is your state of mind to go for what you want. It doesn't matter. It's like Colonel Sanders, he was very old before he, become what he, Kentucky Fried Chicken. So that's always I always look at that because I know he was in his 80s.
Yeah, and some of us are late bloomers. We
That's
come
right.
into our own later in life. I always think the saddest thing is their life after high school. If that's the peak, oh my goodness, that's a lot of years that you've already passed your high point. So, all right, I love that because you're living the sensationally silver, a state of mind. I love that. So, what's the best thing about being your age that you are now?
I think having the confidence, you can do a little bit more because you're a little bit more, I suppose, not outspoken in a bad way, but you've got the confidence to say what you'd like to say. Whereas when you're younger, you sometimes hold on to that and it's a bit fearful. So I think, yeah, just being able to speak more freely, having the confidence to do that. Um, if you've got your health, you've got everything. So, I did have a little bit of a back issue there for a little while, but I just did that organically and physically, and I think you can go beyond those things. You can it's the way you look at things in life in general. And I think once you turn a certain age, or you're a little bit more mature, and that happens to all of us at different times as well. Some people have it. My daughter has the maturity, both of my daughters and my son, a lot more mature than what I was at their age. So maybe it's a passed down thing too, you know.
That they're benefiting from what you've learned. Maybe you're
Mm,
passing it on without even thinking about it. I think that's
yes.
how we pass most things on. The lectures don't work, but the how we live works just Great. Okay,
Mm.
let's talk some about why you are my guest today. You've created a book. Tell us about it.
So when I was a funeral director, I found that it was very stressful for people not to have the information at hand, what a funeral director requires when somebody passes away. I think you're in shock, even if it is expected with a person. I know I've been through that personally. Even though you know that the person's going to die, when they do actually die, it's still a big shock. And to try and find that information out in a very short time can be very difficult sometimes. So I wrote the book so people had the information at hand, but also a tangible book so they can pass that on to their loved ones, their children and their grandchildren. But formally, the most important thing is having that information there. So it starts off that information for the funeral director, then it goes through different parts like let's have a bit of fun. So we can talk about, what your favorite food is, because your favorite food for us wasn't sushi, which it is for my grandchildren now. We wouldn't have even known what that was. So, it just shows the little different things about our life, which will be passed down to them. And we don't always sprout about our achievements in life, whether it be, being the best housewife, the best businesswoman, your achievements with sport. So there's all of that area there that you can, I suppose, reminisce about. So it's a bit of fun when you're filling it out. It's also very good for like palliative care because it is a soft book. It's not anything too much for people. I had one of my residents when I was a community manager, and she only had a couple of weeks to live, and the daughters actually came in and they said, "Oh, we found your book at Mum's place," so they took that into her, and so she was in palliative care, and they filled out the book, and it was very cathartic for them too, and it gave them something to do as well at that particular time. It wasn't about being sad about it. It was about reminiscing about her life and the fun things, her favorite things. So it's more about opening a conversation with my seminars, what I do as well.
So I'm thinking about how often it's so difficult for family members to talk about the dying that is happening
Yes.
and is soon going to end, that whole process. It's like, oh, we mustn't talk about that. We're going to upset the person or whatever. And what your book does is it opens that up as the most appropriate thing to be talking about because it is. That's what's
Mm.
happening. There's not much else when it's happening that we avoid, but this people do kind of out of maybe a mistaken idea of compassion or something, avoid the topic. It becomes a taboo. So you're inviting people to have this dialogue and get to know this person and their life better. I love that idea. So we better tell people what the name of the book is.
So it's called My Circle of Life. So this is I've got a beautiful folder made up as well. So you can keep all your important information in the folder, because it's got place for your will and that type of thing, even if it's a photocopy. And if you can fill it all out and give it to the most important person to you. I suppose the other thing that people don't understand, if they put their funeral wishes with their solicitor, with their will, um, it's too late. Nobody goes to a solicitor when someone dies, not in the first instance. So I have had people like that have done the funeral wishes, but then found out their funeral wishes were with the will and it was totally different than what they wanted. So you need to have that information at hand at that particular time. So I've done it so, yeah, people can have it all in the one spot, and you can even post it to that person. It's a postage pack as well. So as well as a beautiful folder for it to go in and keep all your important documents, your, you know, will and your advanced care, your power of attorney, that type of thing. So you just keep it in a safe spot if you don't want to give it to somebody else, or you send it off. If that's, some people live a long way away, you can still send that off in the post and have all the relevant information there. But yes, it's called My Circle of Life. And it's so www.mycircleoflife.com.au. And so it's my funeral wishes, reflections, and documents.
So the whole package there. I imagine that you have maybe at least one or two stories to tell from being a funeral director about things really not being happy because there wasn't that information. I'm assuming that's what inspired you to put this together.
Yes.
Can you tell a story or two so people understand how important this is?
Sure. I did speak while actually writing the book as well. I did speak to a lot of people while I was doing that, and just in conversation, because if you say you're a funeral director, it is sometimes a little bit confronting for people, but in most, general cases, people want to know more because there's nowhere to go to get information until somebody dies.
Mhm.
You can't just pop into a funeral director. You probably could, but a lot of people don't choose to. So I'm trying to make it so there is an avenue for people to ask questions, and that's what I'm in the process of doing as well. A bit like yourself, being able to create a podcast and some information online for that type of thing. But it is all in my book, but still some of the questions aren't. But getting back to the story, I spoke to a gentleman, and anyway, he said his dad was really unwell, and his dad was at one end of the house, and then his mother was down the other end, so they're a little bit separated. His dad ended up getting dementia, went into a nursing home, and then his mother, when his father died, the son said, "Oh, because they'd lived on a property, what are we going to do? We want to do this." And she said, "No." She said, "No, I'm not having one. I'm not having a funeral." So this poor gentleman, well, he was, probably in his 40s, whatever, but he said he was just devastated. He never got a chance to say goodbye. He never got to grieve through a funeral, which is in a lot of cases very cathartic for that person as well. Now, if his father had written down some directions, that would have been, a non-given. He would have had his funeral, but he didn't. And so the rest of the family suffered because his wife was in charge of his affairs and just said no, he didn't want one, and the son said he did. So all of these little things, if you don't have these things written down, the person in charge of you, whether they be your best friend or whether they be, your husband and wife and you're living separately, there's that one person that takes control, and you don't have any control in what's done after that.
And you're making a point without really spelling it out that sometimes the person who's in control is not maybe in such great harmony with the person who's passing or has passed. And with dementia, it gets too late while the person's still here to get those I want to say marching orders, marching into eternity. Can you talk some about dementia, because it's got to be a problem for lots of people who are dealing with these kinds of issues and questions and getting direction and all of that.
I don't know a lot about dementia. I do have my best girlfriend's husband has dementia. My mother's going through it at the moment. So I just think once you certainly know that you may be, or the other person, or your friend who it may be, some people don't have family, pop all those things down, go through it. Look, with my book, with my mother, I don't ask questions, but I'll go through her story with her, but I'll just have a conversation. Some people aren't open to wanting to write things down. If that's the case, then you have a conversation with them and you go, "Oh, what was it like when you were younger? What was your favourite food, and what was your favourite thing? And oh, where was your mum born again?" It doesn't have to be, "Oh, all right, we're going to fill this book out and be done with it." You can get all the answers, and then you can take that with you and do it all yourself. It doesn't have to be that strict about it. If they're not, if they've got a little bit of dementia, they may not even perceive that. So, there's different ways of doing it. Same as in palliative care. It doesn't have to be, hang on, question one, question two. You're really just opening the conversation. You're opening up about their life. You're making it a positive, beautiful experience for them to reminisce about the beautiful times of their life. It's not going to be you're not going to go into those things, but if you do, some people do when they're dying, they want to talk about things that have been upsetting for them, and people with dementia as well, because they do regress back to their childhood, and that's sort of a constant in their mind because they're not really with us in the now a lot of the time, or in and out, so I think it's very important.
I imagine that some, for want of a better word, secrets get revealed.
That's right.
They're not deliberate secrets, or maybe they are, but they're just things that the younger members of the family or the other members of the family haven't known. And once that person is gone, that door is closed. They're not going to be able to ask those questions.
Mm. And that's the beautiful part of it too. So with my book, you can take the book to the funeral. There is a space there, so you can write down all the attendees there. Normally when you go there, a funeral director will charge you $80 for a couple of pieces of paper on a folder. This way you can put a beautiful photo of the person in the back of the book. You can dry a flower. There's a space there to have, some flowers off the casket and pop that in the book. And then you can have all of the attendees' names there as well. So it's all in one book. So you can have that on your coffee table, and, when the kids come over, they can have a look through and go, oh, I didn't know that about Pop. Or I think it's very important, I need to say, is to do it now rather than wait until things get a little bit more imperative if you can. I think it's good for any age group. I think the book's for anybody, and it really gets you thinking about what you would like, because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. A lot of cases, my son's just had one of his employees, found out a month ago he's only 50. He died last week. You just don't know when your time's going to come. And I think it's a lot easier if you're in a good frame of mind. You don't think that you're going to die. We all don't think we are. We don't know, but we all don't think. We don't dwell on that. But I think it's nice to have those, because you can change it. It doesn't have to be, set in stone. You can change different things as you go along in life. Your tastes change too, like even if it's with flowers or something like that. Everything, you're changing all the time.
A recent guest on this podcast, when I asked him at the end of the conversation what he would say to viewers and listeners, he said, make friends with your death. He said, it's really important. And I love that phrase, because we do tend to just not look, just if I don't look, it won't happen. And none of us are getting out of here alive. So yeah, let's make friends with it. So Bronwyn, tell me about the title, My Circle of Life, because it's a beautiful title. How did you come up with that?
I don't know. There was lots of different things that I could have called the book. I don't know. I just thought, well, it is a circle, isn't it? It's just a continuance of us changing and evolving, really, within ourselves. So I just thought it was nice to have something that was positive. I didn't want anything to do, I didn't want to say death, even though it's very important. And I do say died and death at my seminars. Sometimes when you say people pass away or they've gone, or, it can be sort of thought of in different ways. Whereas I think once you say that, died or death, it sort of makes it real.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's the reason. And I had my daughter-in-law's brother actually is a photographer, and I was looking at some of his photographs, and then I saw this one which is in the beautiful glass on the mountains, and I went, yeah, that's it, that's the way it should be. So yeah, that's just how I came up with it. like I said, there was lots of different, probably 100 different titles that I thought of, but that was the one that just resonated and stuck with me.
Oh, I like it a lot because it does have a sense of the continuance, what you're saying. It's
Yeah,
not,
and we do, and we still continue on.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because our memories kept on, from our children as well and our grandchildren, and and so it continues on. So yeah, I just thought it was nice.
What kind of feedback have you gotten from people who have been involved with your book, whatever generation, in relation to the person who's passing or who has died?
Yeah. So people that generally, purchase my book, they can be anything from in their 30s to, in their 80s, and for all different reasons. I've never not spoken to somebody about my book and they've not bought one. I suppose because I know it's sort of a bit unreal and surreal, really, but I think they just get it. I think once I've spoken about the book, they actually get why it's there and know that it's very important. And actually, when I was at my interview yesterday, one of the girls there, the manager actually said to me, "Oh, I looked up your book last night," because they didn't know about my book. And she said, "Oh, I looked it up." She said, "Oh, that's fantastic." And she said, "Oh, tell Tracy about it," So I did, the girl that was next to me. And she goes, "I need one of those for my mother-in-law. She keeps it up." So there's always some reason why. And yeah, I don't know. Just I think people would like to have their affairs in order. It's just that they've not had a space to do so.
Hmm.
And somewhere that was more positive, rather than just filling out a form and popping it in a drawer. I think people tend to show other people, and I think that's like, that creates somebody else wanting to have my book, through somebody else seeing it, because I think they feel proud to show the book rather than, go and say, "Oh, look, I filled out my paperwork." They're like, "Oh, look at this."
Yeah.
So it gives them a nice avenue to share that information too. They're not going to share the important information, but sharing about their life. And so that that creates the more for me. I mean, I don't do it for the money. I never have. It's never been about that. It's been about just trying to open the conversation, help people that otherwise don't know, and to answer any questions about the funeral industry that they'd like to know.
I had to take a anatomy class quite a long time ago because of something else I was studying. And there was a woman, a young woman in it, who was taking it because she wanted to become a funeral director. And she said the reason was because she felt she could bring something to that was missing, a certain, I don't know, warmth to it that evidently she hadn't experienced. And it sounds like this. I know for me, when you go to have surgery or something, they give you this thing to fill out, and it takes care of a lot of those questions, but it doesn't go into the depth of who I am, who this other person is, what our history is, what matters to us emotionally, all that sort of thing.
Mm.
Do you, Bronwyn, do you find people giving this book to other people as a gift?
Yes,
Really? Yes?
yes,
Because,
yes.
death is a taboo and we get nervous when that topic comes up. We kind of want to avoid it. And yet it seems like the most beautiful gift because it's this way of saying to someone, I want to know about you. I want to know about your life. I
Mm.
want to know what mattered to you then and what matters to you now. I want to know you better.
Yes. Well, when I was community manager, one of the contractors come in, and I tend to find people do like to tell me their story. That's just me. I think maybe my persona in life, which I love. Anyway, he was just chatting about it, and he said, "Oh, I've just had some bad news. My wife's sisters found out she's got cancer and she's going to die anyway." And I said, and I happened to have one of my books there, and I said, "Oh, look, would you like to have a look through it?" He goes, "Oh my God." He said, "That is the best thing." He said, I'm going to purchase one, can I didn't have any there, I only had my copy, anyway, he sent off, and then he ended up buying another two for his parents. So, but he said, "Oh, look, that's just perfect," because she was only young too. So, in her 40s, I think 30s, 40s. So it was, yeah, she was in hospital. So I think he thought that was a nice way for her to be able to, give that to her children as well about her life. Like I say, it's just soft. It's not, it's got beautiful quotations in there. Life's a ride, great ride. So then you're talking about all. So in one section of it is all your accounts. So a lot of people have to spend a lot of time going through information about car insurance, house insurance, loans, credit cards. So it's got all the information in there. So you put the phone number down of the person, you've got your number, there for your insurance. You just have to make a phone call. You don't have to go through. And it's got a section for your passwords, because if somebody doesn't know your Facebook password or whatever password, that stays on there. And that can be very difficult for the family to see that coming up all the time too. So, you can pop your passwords in there. They can take that off the channels if they like. And then, they don't have to worry about it. But passwords to get into your computer as well. I mean, a lot of things are emailed now. They're not paper form. So you need that information to get into someone's computer so they can go through the relevant, invoices and things like that. If it's all written down, that's great. But still, it's nice to be able to get in there and go through those things as well.
Yeah. These are questions and answers that have to be dealt with. And obviously, when someone is in the dying process or they've just passed, those folks around them aren't in the best shape to be digging
No,
out information. Yeah. So what a
no.
wonderful tool for handling that. So before we go any further, I want people to understand where that lovely accent of yours comes from. I know you're from Australia. What part? Where are you from?
So New South Wales, so around the Sydney area.
Around Sydney.
Yeah, probably like a couple of hours. You probably wouldn't know, but yeah, I've lived in a couple of different places in Queensland as well as New South Wales. But yeah, at the moment I am in New South Wales. So different place, Nelson Bay, Newcastle, around that area.
I'm somewhat familiar with Sydney. I've been there, I think, 3 times, but not
Mm.
too much around that area. But I love Australia.
Yes, it's a beautiful place. We're very, very fortunate.
It is a beautiful, beautiful place. I remember being on a bus ride there and looking out, and I just started crying because the landscape where I was on the Great Ocean Road,
Mm.
and it looked like California looked when I was a girl, when I was
Wow.
5 or 6 years old. The eucalyptus trees lining the road, the great, huge vistas. You don't see that in California anymore like you did when I was a kid. You just drove these 2-lane roads through orchards, or whatever, and they're all houses now. And the reason I was crying was because I realized my children would never see that. They'd never see the
Mm.
California I saw. And we didn't have a car. We had to borrow my aunt's car to go on a ride, but those rides were so precious. So I really fell in love with the country that I saw in Australia because it still was country. It was so white.
Yes.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, I totally understand. Things change, don't they? From my place that I grew up called Booker Bay was like a little fishing village, and now it's just so busy. It's just totally different. But you can go to little places, and I know what you mean because I get emotional. I go, oh my gosh, that was like when I was growing up, They haven't been taken over by, apartment buildings and so forth. If you can find these beautiful little spots to go, it makes you go back home, doesn't it? And it is a bit sad our kids won't see it the way it was, but that's our beautiful memories.
It stirs up a lot of nostalgia. Okay, I'm going to ask some questions about Bronwyn now. So tell me, have your dreams that you had earlier in your life come true for you?
Yes. Yeah, I believe they have. I've had a lot of jobs, I suppose. I like a bit of a challenge and then I move on. I like to be able to fix things up, and then I get a little bit bored. So um, every position that I've had in my life, because I was single for many, many years with 3 children. So I did what I had to do, but I always strive to do something more. So I'd set my sights and say, "Oh, I'd like to be a property manager," because I saw once I'd left my family home, having 3 children and being single, it was a really awful experience because we had to sell the house and move on. So I thought, oh, I can do much better than that. Like I can be a lot more sympathetic to somebody that's, working full time, and, because people have a different perception on people that are
Yes.
single mothers. So
Hmm.
I did. And eventually I went around a different way. I went and I was a real estate agent. And that's what I was first in sales, to get into real estate property management. So yeah, I think I've done everything. The only thing I haven't done, I always sort of wanted to be a hairdresser. So so I haven't done that. But that's probably the only thing that I had on my list that I would have liked to have had a little go at.
Well, there's still time, I suppose, right?
That's
Well,
right.
speak
There
of the
is.
hairdresser. Um, do you have regrets? Any big
No.
little regrets? Any kind of regrets?
Oh, look, I try not to. I think life is about I was only saying it this morning actually. It's about it's the way you react. Everything's a reaction. I've certainly self-analyzed myself about different things, but I know I did the best I could at that particular time. And it's nice to look back at yourself and go, okay, even if it's a marriage breakup, just to have a look at that, analyze yourself a little bit, because you can't be a victim. It takes two, and I think it's very good for your own um, mental well-being to really have a look at yourself. I think a lot of people just move on. I like to self-analyze, have a look at myself and go, I could have reacted different to that circumstance. So I think life is about reaction, and it's your reaction that changes a lot of things in your life.
Bronwyn, you are a beautiful example of something that I like to say, which is that attitude is the strongest drug there is. It creates our reality, our attitude, and
Mm.
yours is so positive. I haven't heard one single tiny drop of, oh, I went through all this awful stuff and it was so terrible and poor me. It's just not part of your nature, I don't think. I'm not hearing it at all.
Well, look, I try not to, and I think it's exactly what you say, and I was speaking to my son about it the other day. Like I could talk about, like, my mother's a narcissist. So I've been brought up in a different sort of setting. And my son says, "Oh, mum," because I went to Queensland to visit him, and he said, "Mum, how have you grown up to be such a beautiful, caring mother when your mother was?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. That's just the way I am, Daniel. I'm not like my mother." So I think you've got to look at yourself. That's why I always say, look at yourself. You've got to heal yourself. If you've been through something, heal yourself and move forward from that. Don't let yourself be the victim, or try not to. I know even if you are, there's circumstances, but you know, go and get some help, go and get some counselling, have a look at it, feel it, and then just let it go, move forward.
I like that a lot. So, as we close this interview, Bronwyn, what would you like to say to the people who are listening, to the people who are watching? Do you have a message for all of us?
Um, well, I think J.K. Rowling said it the best. She was, "Death is but the next adventure." And that's a little quotation in my book, and I like to think that that's true. So when we move forward, we're just going to go on another little adventure.
Adventure. And we get to do it without anybody telling us what it's going to be like because it's going to be ours, our unique experience.
That's right.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bronwyn, for sharing with us your perspective, this beautiful book that you've created to make that passage an adventure, a beautiful adventure for everybody who's opening those pages and going through them together. I love that idea so much. So thank you, and thank you to all of you who have been listening and watching. Come join us next time. Bye.
Thanks, Robyn.
Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind, is sponsored by Sensationally Silver, a complete hair care product line created especially for people with hair like ours, naturally gray and white hair. Sensationally Silver products can be found exclusively at sensationallysilver.com.
Sensationally silver.